Hello everybody, welcome to another video. This one is going to be a little bit different, and you can see I'm off to the side here because, let's be honest, most of you are here for the bunnies. Anyway, it's coming up on the end of 2021. I wanted to do something a little bit different. In today's video, I'm going to be going into some of my comments on my videos and pulling out questions about sanding, and then I'm going to answer them, give you some tips about sanding, why I do certain things the way I do them. And I also have a little update about these guys. Not only that, but I'm going to be looking at some new tools and products that I have and talking about one of my upcoming videos that you can actually be a part of. So without further ado, let's get into the video. My name is Angie and I refinish furniture. Sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't, but I always do what I can to save old pieces from the trash. Welcome to my workroom. Okay, so we're going to be talking about sanding and sandpaper. I had a comment on one of my YouTube videos from Michelle Peters, and she wanted to know why it's better to go from 120 to 220 to 320 up to 400 versus just going from 120 straight to 400 if that's what you want to end up at. And there is a reason for that. So I've got 4 little sanding discs here. I've got 80, 120, 180, and 220. This is the 80. And I'm hoping it'll show up here. You can see that these coarse little abrasive bits are fairly aggressive actually. 80 is a pretty good grit, and I don't use it that often because it is so aggressive. I'll use it on solid wood. I rarely use it on veneer just because it scratches the surface so much that by the time you get to your final grit, you just worn down too much and you often will go through the veneer. It's a common problem with beginners. I went through it. I'm sure most of you have gone through it as well. 120, let's see here, still fairly aggressive. This is what I generally start with on veneer or solid wood pieces that I've stripped, either a 120 or a 150. Like I said, it's pretty rare that I would go to an 80 now. I just don't use them as much. Here's a little side by side and you really can see the difference here. Next up is 180 grit, which is a fair bit finer. I'll hold it up next to the 120. Might be a little hard to see as these get finer. Oh no, you can still see it pretty well here. Okay, and then 220 I'll hold up next to the 180, which is this one. This is 220. So yeah, you can see as they get finer, it's harder to see the particles. Anyway, so why can't you go from an 80 straight to a 220 if that's what you want to end up at? The main reason is that all of these little particles, they leave scratches and gouges in the wood. So another really common issue beginners have, and I've talked about it in a few of my videos, is when you get those circular, especially if you're using an orbital sander, those little circular swirling marks. Those are the deep scratches that this will create. The problem is if you go from an 80 grit to a 220 grit, the 220 is not taking off enough material to get down to the very bottom of the scratches that the 80 is going to leave. Bear with me here. This is the best way I can think of to show you what the heck I'm talking about. So little arts and crafts here, kind of. So let's say this is our board. It's blown way up here. This is our board, okay? Notice on the back of these I have some colors. So 80 is green. I've got red for 120, blue for 180, and this purple color for the 220. So green is 80. I'm going to grab my green Sharpie here. This is obviously not to scale and it's not scientific by any means, but this is the best way I can think of to show you. I saw something similar on another video once and I was like, that's a really good way to explain it. So I'm going to try to do my own version of it here. So this is your board. You go in with your 80 grit, okay? And your 80 grit's going to leave scratches. So it doesn't really matter if you're hand sanding or used an orbital sander. An 80 grit is going to leave pretty much a consistent level here of scratches. So the whole point in moving up to higher grits is to try to get to the bottom of the scratch so that the wood is as flat as possible. Normally you do that by graduating up. If you decide to skip it for whatever reason, maybe you're short on time or you just don't feel like it, a really common reason people will skip the step up is they think they're saving money by using less sanding pads, but you don't, and here's why. So let's say we're going to skip the upgrade here and go straight to 220. I'll grab my purple marker. The purple marker is going to leave much shallower scratches. So if you're looking at this is your 220, this is your 80, you have a lot of work to do to get this level of wood all the way down to the bottom of the 80 grit. And if you don't get all the way down into the bottom of these scratches, that's when you see a lot of those swirl marks, especially if you're staining. And sometimes you'll get uneven staining, or the colors just seem to be very, very dark. On the other hand, if you were to go from 80 to 120, which is recommended, the 120 is going to come down to, let's say, here. So you can see that you've got a lot less work to get down to the bottom of the 80 now. Then you grab your next one, which is 180, which would come, I'm just going to go over this here for a minute, which would come down to about here. That's going to bring you to another level, and then you can finish off with the 220. Oftentimes though, it's not just one pass. If you start off with your 80, it looks flat. It's not, because of the deeper scratches that it leaves, but then you move up to 120. Sometimes you need to do a couple of passes back and forth to get to the bottom of the 80 grit. Then you come in with your 180. It takes a couple of passes to get to the bottom of the 120, and then so on and so forth. Am I making any sense, or am I just rambling? Because I feel like I'm rambling. Anyway, this fancy drawing here, this is the reason why you should step up your grits. You need to get to the bottom of the scratches of the previous grit in order to have a smooth, consistent finish, especially if you're staining. How high up in grit you go, that depends on you. It depends on what you're doing with the piece, whether you're staining it or just putting a clear coat. For staining, I usually won't sand above a 220, somewhere between 180 and 220, keeping in mind that the higher the grit is, the less the stain is going to penetrate. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit difficult to explain, and this visual don't judge me, I am an artist, which is kind of sad when you look at this. Another thing that's really important to think about when you're sanding between different grits is that when you go to move up to the next grit, that you either brush off the surface, use a tack cloth to wipe it off. Some people have air hoses that they blow it off with, but the main reason you want to do that, it's particularly bad with the coarser grits, but as you're sanding, there are little tiny little bits of dust that come off. If you lose some of these 80 grit pieces and move on to your 120 grit, those little dust pieces are going to get stuck in this pad and leave more marks. So there was another question on one of my videos from Adele, and she wrote, I followed all of your tips and I'm still getting swirl marks. I'm using a Ryobi orbital sander with the pads that were given in the box. What could be the issues? Do I need to strip the finish on the veneer to make sure old finish material isn't gunking up my sanding pad? Part of what I just explained could be happening if you're not wiping away the previous sanding stuff in between grits. You could be losing little pieces that are getting stuck in your next sanding pad. Another thing that can happen sometimes when you go right in with a sander over a finish, and it's one of the reasons I generally prefer to strip or scrape a finish before sanding, not always, but most of the time, is because certain finishes, as the orbital is spinning around and is generating heat, the old finish will start to get gummy and it'll actually gunk up in your sanding pad. And I wish I had one to show you. It hasn't happened to me in a while, so I don't have an example, but basically you'll see rings of brown and it almost looks thick like a wax coating that you get on this as you're sanding. If you see that, it's best to stop what you're doing and either scrape or strip the finish and then proceed with sanding. Now, she did mention following some of my other tips, and most likely those would be to not use too much pressure. If you're sanding and you're pushing down on the sanding pad and you can see the spinning pad slow down or even stop, heaven forbid, that is way too much pressure. You'll see in some of my videos where I'll actually demonstrate and I'll have just 3 fingers sitting on the top of the sander as it's going along. That shows you pretty much all of the pressure you need to have. If you're using a really light pressure and it's not cutting through the finish, you either need to get rid of the finish before you sand or try a different grit. Another common mistake is moving too quickly with sanding. Even though some of my refinishing videos, I'll speed up the footage to kind of save time so that we don't have a 3-hour video. But I'll usually take a little clip and I'll slow it down and show it to you in real time. And you can see that I'm actually moving quite slowly with the sander, and that is absolutely key for getting a good sanding coat. No. For getting a good sanding. For getting a good smooth sanding. Ms. Shell Bell 82 commented on one of my videos, and she said, "You mentioned that newbies often don't change the sandpaper often enough. How do you know when to change it?" Couple of things. First is the most obvious, when you notice it's not picking up the finish or not cutting through the finish or the layers of wood the same way it was. When you notice it starts to dull down, I change it. Sometimes you'll have a little section here in the center, and usually is a circle, and you'll see this wear down generally faster than the outer edges. When this starts to wear down, I change it. If you notice that it's starting to gum up with old finish, if you're going over a finish without having stripped or sanded it first, change the sand pad. Joseph Watson actually commented on another one of my videos, and he said that someone once told me, "Use sandpaper like you are not the one paying for it." And it's so true. I know a lot of us in this business are trying not to be wasteful. We're trying to use things as much as possible. Sandpaper, unfortunately, is one of those things that you don't want to try to get the absolute most out of. Your results will suffer because of it. I had a comment on another video, and actually I've had throughout all of my videos several comments saying the same thing. This is just the first one that I saw. "How does that sander work with that vacuum? I need to refinish some furniture in my basement, but I don't want a bunch of dust." Some orbital sanders come with a little, it's almost like a little vacuum bag that attaches to the back of it. If that pops off, you can attach a shop vac to your sander. When I first started doing this, I initially just had the shop vac hose directly attached to the sander. About a year ago, I bought an Oneida Dust Deputy, and basically what that is, it's a cyclonic system. So what happens is you attach your sander to the Dust Deputy to the shop vac. So when you turn the shop vac on and you start sanding, the shop vac is going to pull dust through the hose. It's going to, the heavier particles are going to get trapped in this cyclonic action of the Dust Deputy and fall into the bucket, and the lighter particles are going to continue on and go into your shop vac bag. I always use a shop vac bag. Some people don't, but I find if you don't, especially with sanding dust, you're going to clog your filter and burn out your shop vac a lot faster than you normally would. The Dust Deputy and shop vac system I have, it's good, but it's not the best. It's not super efficient, and I do still have some sanding dust, but it definitely cuts down a lot. It's a pretty economical way to get started with dust collection. In the future, I'll probably move up to a more professional dust collection system, whether it's Festool or a big wall-mounted Oneida system. I don't know yet. I can't really afford it right now, but that's kind of what I'm moving toward. But for now, my shop vac and the Dust Deputy do a good job of pulling most of the dust from my sander. One thing to keep in mind is that the stronger or the more powerful your shop vac is, the more dust you're going to pull out. So the one I have, I think it's only about 3.5 horsepower. You can get much higher powered shop vacs, and those are going to pull a lot more dust from your sander. Moving on now, I want to talk about some of the new products and tools that I've gotten from viewers, people that have sent me things from my Amazon wishlist. I had to put a sweater on, I was cold, in case you're wondering why the costume change. These I'm really excited about, and it was quite unfortunate that there was no note in the box, so I don't know who sent these to me, but I'll show you. I'm super excited to use these on something. These are furniture legs. As you can see, they would basically be like this. Really, really pretty. There's a set of 4. I know exactly the type of furniture I want to use these on. I just haven't found the right piece yet, which is why I haven't used them. If you were the one who sent these to me, please comment below and let me know so I can properly thank you. I'm stoked to use them. Another gift I received recently from MTA Mall is this awesome veneer edge banding. So basically what this is, these are really thin strips of walnut veneer that would go along the edge of something. And because I do a lot of mid-century pieces, a lot of times their edge banding gets ruined. So this is just raw wood. Basically, you would heat this up and then you can stain it or do whatever it is you're doing with it. Anyway, huge thank you to MTA Mall for this. This is another thing that's going to be so handy, and it's something that I've never had before and always wanted. And it's a magnetic pickup tool. So it can extend. You basically just pull it and it extends, and you can reach down into dressers if you happen to drop a screw or something like that, and it'll help you pick those up. So this is from Harlan Zink. Thank you so much, Harlan. I'm excited to use this. Some of you saw in one of my most recent videos where I got a package of furniture paints that you can use to mimic wood grain. This is actually a set of miniature paintbrushes. So super fine tips, and this is going to help me out a lot because I don't have, even though I'm an artist and you can't see it, but right here there's like a stack of canvases. I don't have any super fine tips, so this is going to come in handy. Thank you so much for this. I'm going to use this pretty much every time I use those furniture paints. Another cool item that I just received, and I'm so sorry, I'm probably going to screw your name up. Scott Bussenbark? I'm not really sure how to pronounce your name, I'm so sorry. This is actually a woodworking dowel jig kit, which helps you drill straight holes to apply dowels, and it comes with multiple bits here. For an average furniture flip where you're just kind of painting or maybe doing a few minor repairs, you wouldn't use something like this, but because I do a lot of more intense repairs, this is really going to be useful, especially when it comes to like chairs and end tables and stuff where the legs are put together with dowels. This is going to be awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. I have 2 more products to tell you about. And the reason I'm doing this is because some of these I haven't had a chance to use yet, but it's been, you know, a couple of weeks or even a month or more since I received them, and I just wanted to let the people who sent them know that I did get them and I am super grateful. I just haven't had a chance to use them yet in a video. This is something I actually do have one already, but I really wanted a second one. These snap on top of spray cans just like this, and it gives you a lot more accuracy and control. It almost acts like a spray gun. I do believe that this is from Melissa Pennington, and if it's not, my apologies. I had this one little Amazon note here that somehow got separated from the item. This is a 276 piece Work Pro rotary tool accessory kit, so like a Dremel, something like that. I'm pretty sure that this one came without a note. So if you were the one who sent this, you're awesome, man. This is so cool. It's almost surreal to get things in the mail from total strangers. It reminds me of when I was a kid and we had pen pals. The excitement when you go to the post office and there'd be something there for you. These are tools that I can actually use and in some cases review, tell you what I like about them, and then if you like them, you can also go and get them for yourself. As well as the coffees and teas that people have been sending me through the Buy Me a Coffee app. I am still getting those. They're still so appreciated. It's not necessary, but it's a great way to help support the channel and say thank you for the content. And literally every single tea that comes through makes me smile. I had no idea this channel was going to grow so fast. I had sort of rough goals, but you guys have completely exceeded my expectations. I'm just around the corner from 100,000 subscribers, which is just blows my mind. I wanted to say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart and wish everybody a happy and safe holiday season. These little guys, these are my 2 foster babies. There were 4, 2 got adopted, I guess a couple of weeks ago. 2 little girls just found a home, so I'm going to be foster bunnyless soon. Temporarily, I'm sure we'll have more come in. And it's always so hard to let them go. They're so sweet, but I'm so happy to say that they found a safe, loving forever home. Don't worry, the bunny intermissions will continue, but I'll be showing some of my own bunnies. So these are just my fosters. We actually have 4 bunnies plus 1 other foster here in the house. So you'll get to meet some of my own bunnies. Well, I did not expect this video to go so long. Thank you so much for sticking with me. It's more or less wrapping up the end of the year, some odds and ends and my thank yous. There is one more thing I want to mention though. One of my upcoming videos in the new year will be again going through my comments and picking certain ones to respond to that I think would benefit people the most. So if you have a question, it could be about furniture, it could be about me personally, it could be about my business, the bunnies, it doesn't really matter. If you have a question you want to ask below. In another month or so when I go and get ready to do that video, I will look through the comments here and pick out some to answer. So thanks again for sticking with me. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. I will see you in 2022.